Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out, and a special thanks to my Patreon and channel members. This video is sponsored by myself. I just opened up a Patreon for those of you that want individual chapters for manhwas, or shorter daily uploads that aren't enough for full-length parts on the channel. Link will be in the description, and pinned comment. Sorry for the interruption. The series starts with a man waking up in an unfamiliar forest wondering where he is. As he's walking forward he trips, eating shit on the floor. He spots a nearby river. When he goes over he looks at his reflection, and recognizes the outfit. He then hears footsteps, and looks up to spot a unique looking animal. He says that he recognizes this creature too, and there's no mistake, he knows exactly where he is now. A blue light starts to shine, and appears directly in front of him. He says there's no way he could be wrong as a fairy appears welcoming him. The man says that this is the world of Last. Last is the best-selling survival game in the world. Players gather resources, build bases, and aim to survive in a world with monsters. The freedom to explore, detail, and NPCs and well-balanced gameplay, as well as events and updates constantly being pushed, each bringing new developments drive people to it, making it a game worthy of being the best-selling game in the world. And he takes pride in that, as he is the developer of the game. And his name is Soshi Kamiya. As he's typing away at his keyboard we see him, low-key starting to sweat before he hits enter. And he has successfully updated the game to version 3. He lets out a sigh of relief and he says with this version it has reached a milestone. Base level 100 has been implemented and achieving it unlocks the season's ending story. Of course this isn't the end as plans for the next season are already in progress. It's been 5 years since development and 3 years since release, but the ideas keep flowing and this game will continue to get even more interesting. A man enters asking if it's true that he finished it. And Kamiya says that he didn't expect him to arrive so fast. His name is Anahara. Anahara double checks if version 3 has been finally released, saying that he came flying over after hearing it. But for them to come this far, by the way this is the licensor, he says that Kamiya actually did everything alone and he admires him. Kamiya corrects him saying that some background music and designs were outsourced, and Anahara says normally it would be impossible to make a game of this scale alone as it would be unheard of. Kamiya tells him that it's because of him the scale has reached where it is now. And Anahara is the one who supported him as the producer while he focused only on making the game. He and Anahara met because their high school attendance numbers were next to each other. Even before the game was released he quit university just to help produce it, and he's someone he owes a lot to. Anahara says the game is so good, and if it doesn't sell then the world is wrong, and the recent user satisfaction survey gave it a 98% rating. Kamiya says that's 2 points short and Anahara tells him that it's impossible for a game to please everyone. But Kamiya tells him that if they answer the survey it means they were interested at least a bit, so it is possible to make them think that the game is addicting. Anahara sighs and then tells him he did great on the release and then asks if he signed the documents he gave him the other day. Kamiya says that he left them on the desk and there were so many that he'll leave the details to him. Anahara picks it up and laughs as he starts going through it, saying he appreciates his trust. 3 men then enter the room and Anahara raises one of the pieces of paper saying that with this he is no longer needed here. Kamiya asks what he means and Anahara says that he really has no interest in anything but making games, that's why he's taking all rights of Last from him. Kamiya asks what he means as he's the one who made the game and he's also needed for the operations going forward. Anahara says that with base level 100 implemented it could be considered complete as a game. From a business perspective further updates are unnecessary. Kamiya tells him that he couldn't possibly understand what game development is like, and one of the men throw him onto the floor. He starts to feel frustrated and Anahara says that he wouldn't listen anyways and bringing a bodyguard was the right choice. His obsession with the game was in the way. He constantly tried to push updates that don't bring profit and strict supervision made merchandise expansion impossible. Now that the game is complete, him being around only limits their profits. Kamiya says even so this way of doing things doesn't make sense and they could have discussed it. Anahara looks down at him saying that he wouldn't have listened anyways. Their division of work meant don't interfere with each other's areas, and the bodyguard then lets go of him. Anahara tells him to leave as the contract tells him to vacate this room as well. So with that, Kamiya lost all authority over the game. He had been considering a lawsuit but the chances were slim. Furthermore, Anahara skillfully gained public support and created an atmosphere where everyone believed in him. Kamiya was furious seeing, since at this rate Last is going to fail, and he gets a message on his computer. It's from the Last operations team and he wonders if Anahara really sent him an email. When he opens it, it says if he loves it so much he should stay in the game world, and he asks what that means before the screen turns really bright and sucks him straight into it. Which is how we got to where we are now. The fairy says the rules of this world are simple: gather resources, strengthen his base, repel enemies and survive. He realizes how bad this is when she says enemies. He says that this outfit indicates the free trial character, which has minimum stats, no skills or equipment. It just allows you to experience the flow of the game once, and it's so weak that the first monster attack will kill you. She tells him it's time to start the game, and his heart starts to race as he realizes at this rate he'll die in tonight's attack. The fairy says it's now time to begin the game, asking Camilla for his name. He looks at the character name status window and he says that this really is the world of the game he created, and he starts face rolling his fucking keyboard, saying that this is the hidden code that allows entry into developer mode. The fairy looks genuinely taken aback as status windows start flowing in from all around. He says that this means his code actually works here. She then realizes that he used the developer mode, and he tells her that he's actually the one who developed the game, and she starts to get really excited. He calls her by her name, which is Leafy, and we learn that she's a forest fairy who protects nature, and she believes human activities are also part of nature and gives them advice when they enter the forest. He double checks that he's in the game of last, and she says that he is, and it's undoubtedly the world he created. He says he sees and then asks if she can see the meta information of the game, and if so then just the parts related to the development is fine. She says that she can since he entered developer mode, and walks over to his status window showing him. He says though the game was made almost entirely by him alone, the current game master is none other than Anahara. She asks who this is, and he tells her that he's the one who stole the game from him. She says that's horrible. He tells her the fact that he's here is likely his doing too. She asks how he could do that, and she says she won't forgive him, but he wonders why he's here, since he doesn't know the reason or logic behind it, but he also can't afford to die here. He says that he'll make sure he survives and takes back his game from Anahara, asking Leafy if she'll help him. She says of course. Then we see him warping somewhere as he spawns in, directly in front of a base. He says that it's a strange sensation. When he looks around he says this is the level 1 base. She says she's sorry she could only prepare something like this for him, but he tells her that it's fine. As even in developer mode he can only see parameters, and he can't actually abuse it to upgrade his base. He enters the house and walks over to a pedestal as there's a magic stone that sits atop it. She says normally this would be the tutorial but he doesn't need it, but he says he'll do it. She looks surprised and he says that the tutorial is valuable time where he can safely collect materials as monsters don't spawn inside of it. She says she sees, and with the trial character normal gathering might be difficult. He tells her that makes sense since it's a character that is meant to die on the first night, and in this current state there's a chance he would die in a single hit, so he doesn't have time to waste and they have to start immediately. She says certainly as we see his eyes staring at a status window that tells him he's starting the tutorial, and it looks like it bugs out for a minute. It then jumps to him running through a field saying that he put his all into making the tutorial. Even with his eyes closed he knows the position of the materials and there's no time before the night raid, so he has to hurry. Bro is speedrunning it. Leafy sits there at the house, but when he gets back, she says that he did great. He says that he should do some crafting before night falls and she asks if he really gathered enough to craft already. He says he made the game, so he thought it was possible. She says there wasn't a single player who could actually do it. As he attempts to craft we see all the materials coalesce into the magic stone and that he's actually succeeded in crafting both a wooden sword and a wooden barricade. He says this is good but as equipment it's unreliable. This trial character wasn't made to be playable in the first place. Even if the enemy moves exactly as intended and he responds perfectly his probability of survival is at least a few %, and after it would guide you to buy the full version of the game. Night comes and we see it look like a horde night from 7 Days to Die as the entire sky turns red. The quest is now to survive through it and he knows now that it's getting real. She tells him good luck as what he spots off in the distance is that deer monster he spotted earlier. It then falls over onto the floor dead, as the first enemy of the night is a goblin. While their intelligence is low and it's a low-tier monster itself they sometimes attack and swarm and should not be underestimated. He opens his inventory pulling out his sword and we see his stats are all just straight up at 5 and his level is only 1. Nor does he have any skills. The goblin leaps in at him and he recognizes the attack pattern and dodges in advance. Leafy says that his stats should be insufficient but since he knows the game so well it might be possible. As he starts dodging every single attack it puts him on the defensive and he has to permanently create distance by backpedaling. The goblin then swings and Camilla blocks it with his hand as it cuts through his wrist. He says even though he knows it's coming he can't dodge them all because his speed is too low. When he counterattacks the goblin blocks it and there's not even a hint of damage because his strength is also lacking. The goblin then kicks him in the chest and he starts to spit up blood as he falls backwards onto the floor. He says that he can tell based on the pain that it's real. However, he can't allow himself to be killed by the game since he's the one who made it. He turns and starts running towards the house. He says he doesn't have the stats to overpower a goblin from the front with his character. Though using game mechanics it might be possible as he opens something called weapon deployment. He summons the barricade as the goblin is leaping forward. It sees it, but it is too late as it gets impaled straight through the chest. It begins screaming and tries to pull itself off of it. Kamiya says that even if he puts his entire body weight into the attack there's a chance it won't work. But he does so anyway as he charges forward and stabs straight down into the goblin's chest, where the wound was. He starts panting but we see the goblin dead. And it turns out that all he had to do was survive the goblin attack and that was all as he has now completed the quest. Low-key expected more. He says that he knows just how difficult it will be to survive in this world since he's the one who made it. But even so he can't help but love it since it is his creation and he'll definitely survive and take everything back after he crawls out of it. The next morning, Kamiya walks over to the magic stone, and he says that the texture feels completely real for the sword. Leafy tells him good morning, asking if he's going to go gather more materials today. He says no since yesterday's tutorial was enough, so he's going to focus on crafting today as he has to see her as soon as possible. Of course he doesn't say who, and Leafy says that she can't believe that he has this many basic resources already. He explains that in the game you can gather various materials from the area surrounding your base. The materials are converted into 3 basic resource types, and stored in the magic stone. The first is mana. Mana is like life energy used for raising people or creating magic type items. The second is element. Then elements are necessary for producing physical things like food and buildings. The third is gold. It is literally money, and even things that cannot be purchased can sometimes be obtained by civilized people when wandering traders visit. As we see him starting to craft something as he puts his hand over the magic stone, it turns out that he has all of these maxed out already. He crafts a bow, some arrows, a watchtower, and logs. He says he wants to craft something more powerful, but it's impossible with his current stats. She says this is the requirement for that character's appearance, and of course she doesn't say who it is either. He tells her that he's going to need to find allies, especially to get through the 7th day. She says that him trying to survive the stampede is crazy. He explains that monster raids occur basically every night, however the stampede is a massive outbreak of monsters that happens every 7 days. That makes my 7 days joke a lot more fitting. He says that it's on a completely different level of difficulty because on that night when the swarming monsters attack repeatedly, the difficulty is tuned so that even players of the full version can barely survive. Even if one somehow manages to survive until the 6th day, it is theoretically impossible to clear a stampede with a trial version character. After all, if you could there would be no reason to buy the full game. Leafy says even for him the creator surviving a stampede with a free trial character is not going to happen. He asks what will happen if he dies in this world, and she says she doesn't know. Normally NPCs who die don't respawn, and he might not come out of it safely. She says that she will help him out. Due to the system she cannot participate in combat, and she might not be able to give him advice that he doesn't know as the creator, but she will do her best to gather info so that he can survive. He looks a bit surprised, and tells her that he is counting on her, and to also stop calling him creator and just use his name instead. She tells him that to her he is the creator, and he tells her that's fair enough. He just looks glad not to be alone, but he heads outside and opens his inventory, and deploys the watchtower. As it spawns in front of him he starts to head up, saying that it's a bit inconvenient that he can't deploy things unless he moves there himself, and she says that it's true since the base is low level they can't even deploy things directly from the map yet. When he finally steps up top he looks surprised as he gets a nice view of the landscape around him. He says it's amazing, and she says that this was all brought to life by him. He still finds it so surreal that the characters of his game are alive, and the world is directly in front of him. But now, that's an even bigger reason that he can't give up on taking the game back. It is now nightfall, as the quest is to survive the night again. He equips his bow, and looks over the tower seeing 2 goblins, saying that on the 2nd night you face 2 enemies, and the concept of combat this time is different as it's multiple enemies. He draws the boy back sighing he'll take the initiative. But he barely has the strength to even do that. Leafy says it's because he doesn't have a strength modifier. He tells her he's the one who set the stats so he won't complain. He shoots it out and it grazes past one of the goblin's cheeks before landing on the floor. He says he can't believe he missed it, and Leafy says that the accuracy modifier isn't active yet either. He says that the early game hardship is a part of the game that he developed himself, so it can't be helped. He shoots another one, hitting the goblin in the knee, and he says that he needs to do it again. The next time he pierces the goblin through the chest and it falls backward screaming. He then hops off of the watchtower and draws his bow back as the one that got hit in the knee starts charging at him. He says based on what he learned from yesterday's battle, even if his stats are insufficient, as long as he can predict one step ahead, there's a way for him to accurately dodge and counterattack. As he draws back the bow, he says that since accuracy is inversely proportional to distance, he won't miss this as it's point blank. He fires and it lodges straight through its skull. That was the one he shot in the chest, my bad. As he walks over to the one that got shot in the leg, he fires a shot straight into its chest, causing it to fall onto the floor. It looks up as if begging for its life, and he draws the bow back before shooting it in the face as well. He has now completed the second night. Leafy tells him that he did it, and he looks down at the corpse saying that he guesses so, but off in the distance we see a woman watching him. The next morning he goes out and gathers the arrows, saying that he can't afford to waste resources, so he needs to recover any usable arrows. A tool tip from Leafy says that fired arrows have a certain chance of breaking, but if they remain intact they can be recovered and reused. He now looks at his arrows, and since there should have been 2 intact but there's only one, they both say that it means that the bait has been taken as a recruitment quest has now been triggered, called the Fate of the Missing Arrow. They see comical footsteps leading into the woods, and as they follow it he tells Leafy to be careful. She says that she'll be fine since she can't interfere with the game's content, it means it can't harm her either. As he continues following it he explains that in Last there is a system where NPCs can become your allies. If certain conditions are met during gameplay, an NPC will wander near your base, and by clearing a recruitment quest unique to each NPC they will join your party. From combat to production, NPCs have various areas of expertise, and they are indispensable for clearing the game. He says even when lives are on the line he needs allies, and he finds that a bit burdensome. She then says that it's up ahead, as we see the woman watching a trap. It gets triggered by a log that Camilla throws. She quickly hops off the tree doing flips before landing, and she walks over drawing her dagger. We learn that her name is Anemone. She's surprised to see that it's a log though, and Camilla says that they are not her enemies. She distances herself, and he tells her to please listen to him, but when he goes to tell her, she runs far into the woods, leaving them both surprised. Leafy says she didn't expect that, and even Camilla says that this kind of development wasn't in the game. Leafy says since he the creator has become an inhabitant of this world, it seems the game scenarios are no longer playing out automatically, and that he'll have to convince her through dialogue as she seems to be on guard. Camilla says that he sees playing the game and actually doing this are 2 different things. If the characters are alive then a wrong move could turn them into an enemy. He decides to finish his gathering quest instead, and when he heads back Leafy welcomes him asking if he was able to replenish the necessary elements. He says fortunately yes, since no monsters showed up, and it's time to get to crafting. She wonders if it'll go well. He says that he's the one who came up with her character settings, and he thinks this method has the highest chances of success. She is a hunter that lived alone with her father, and after he died she continued to live in the forest by herself, which is how he set her up. If he can somehow show her the richness of living with others, there's a chance that she'll join them. That said, this is a situation not covered by the game's original scenario, and he can't say for sure. She says she understands. He begins crafting as he makes an iron pot, a ladle, salt, pepper, and some other items, and he says that the ingredients are already prepared. He starts to set up a campfire, and he says he never thought the day would come where he'd be cooking inside of the game. Leafy says that once his level increases he'll be able to generate finished meals instantly. He says that this isn't a bad experience in its own right. She tells him he's quite good at this, and he says that just after he finished high school, Anahara would come to his place a lot, and since he lived alone he was always holed up creating the game. He did nothing but cook, but he looks a bit bitter about his time spent with Anahara now, and tells her that's a story from a long time ago. Footsteps begin approaching them, and when they turn, Anemone already has her bow drawn. Camilla says he told her before they aren't enemies, and she asks if there is anybody else. He's confused, but realizes that she can't see Leafy, and Leafy tells him to say no. He says that it's just him, then introduces himself, asking who she is, but she says that she has no idea where she is. She was in the middle of a hunt, and now she's in an unfamiliar forest. He says that he himself only just arrived in this area, and even if she told him where she was from originally he wouldn't know the geography of this place. He guesses she came over because of the food, asking if she wants any. He also tells her that it's not poisoned or anything, and she should treat it as a peace offering. Her stomach starts to rumble, and she walks away before finding a place to sit down. He brings her a plate, saying that it's called Salisbury steak, pretty much just grilled meat with some other things added. She takes a bite and instantly looks excited as she starts scarfing it down. She says she's never eaten food that was this delicious, and he's glad to hear that. She then asks if he can make more, and he says that he can since he has the ingredients, but he needs something in return. She asks what he needs. He says he needs combat power since it is dangerous around here, and it is now time for night 3. She says she understands. He says that if she doesn't want to be hunted she needs to become the hunter. We see the current recruitment quest is still in progress though, but if they fight alongside one another and she survives she will join his base. She tells him that hunting is actually her specialty as they ready themselves. As they look off into the forest, they spot eyes staring back at them as goblins appear. Leafy says that she thought there would be more than 3 of them, and Camilla says there are still more in the back. As 3 more pull up, there are a total of 6 now. He quickly pulls his sword out of his inventory telling her to cover him, and Anemone asks if he really just used storage magic, and that means that he might be the contractor of the magic stone. Interesting she knows of it, but he's the first to take charge as he leaps into the entire group for some reason, and makes his way to the one in the back. She says that he said to cover her, but when they're all bunched up like this it's a little hard. He kicks one in the chest, saying that this is the first one she needs to take down. She says bet, and fires an arrow straight into its head. She asks if he's really keeping track of her line of fire while fighting, and while he pushes 2 of them apart he throws one toward her, saying this is the second one. She fires the shot, piercing straight through the side of its skull. One then jumps on top of him, and he says that he'll use its own momentum against it as he rolls backwards, sending it flying into the air. She shoots it as well, also getting a headshot. She instantly starts reaching for her next arrow, as there are only 3 goblins left. One of them keeps Camilla distracted while the other 2 charge straight toward Anemone. She fires a shot, but since she can't line it up, she hits it in the arm. She then pulls out her dagger and blocks both of their attacks, and Camilla says that she needs to fight while retreating toward the cabin, and she doesn't need to worry about finishing them off. One starts to run straight toward her, and she notices it before cartwheeling backwards to avoid the attack, but it steps on the ground causing it to crack, and it falls down into a pit of spikes. He wonders if it worked, and says crafting traps beforehand was definitely the right move. Now there are only 2 goblins left. Anemone charges toward hers, but Camilla is struggling to fend off his goblin, saying that because of his stats being piss low this is impossible, and it sends his sword flying through the air. It goes to finish the job, and he realizes this is bad, before Anemone puts an arrow into its skull too. He turns surprised, as she's already killed hers by stabbing it in the back of the neck. With this, day 3 has now been completed, and Leafy runs over crying. He then heads over to the magic stone, and Anemone says that this means he really is the contractor of it. He says that he just made it recently though. Leafy has a little text pop up that says NPCs understand the various player-specific abilities corresponding to the game's operations as special magic usable only by those who are contracted with the magic stone. Camilla then asks if she has nowhere else to go, if she'll join him, as he needs a collaborator to survive in this place. She tells him that someone who is a magic stone contractor is burdened with holding a mission for the world. The fact that she wandered in here probably has some meaning as well. And besides, his combat ability was impressive so she's counting on him. She officially joins the party, and he says that he's glad to have her. The next morning he starts cooking her some more food out front. She asks if that's breakfast. He tells her yes, and it's almost ready. He does a double take because the only thing she's wearing is an oversized shirt, and he's a loser who never got any huzz. So her plot is making him feel embarrassed. He says that the setting was that she lived in the forest for a long time with her father, but he didn't think it would make her this indifferent to being seen. He also knows now that he needs to add rooms immediately after leveling up the base. And while he gained her as a combat asset, they won't be able to survive the stampede as they are now, and leveling up the base is the key to survival. Sometime later we see him picking up a rock as he puts it into his inventory, and then quickly moves spot to spot gathering materials. Anemone says that he's pretty good at gathering. We see him staring at all of the materials he's got so far back at the base. Anemone asks what's wrong, and he says they still don't have enough resources to level up the base. She asks what he means, and he says that if they store enough resources in the magic stone they can use its power to construct buildings and build barricades. That's why he had her gather resources with him, but it still was not enough. She says that's a bit of a shame. He tells her that around here there's a monster outbreak every 7 days, and they need barricades as well as traps if they want to survive. She says that she'll go gather more. He tells her to please do, and he'll try to figure out there's another way. He says that he thought if they could borrow her power since she shouldn't be here this early in the game. He thought they could gather resources in time, but he guesses it's still not possible. Leafy tells him that if only they had item drop rate bonuses, and it's such a shame. We learn based on her little tooltip that there are drop rate bonuses that make good items appear more easily, but since he's a trial character he doesn't have those bonuses though. He says he can't help it, and he should think of another way, and he tells her to bring up all the developer mode consoles. She starts to do so as they appear all around him. He starts analyzing them all, and he says it'd be nice if he could directly manipulate the parameters, but that would be difficult system-wise, sync even if they could, as doing it while the game's running would be risky because it has a complex game system. Various AI adjustment systems are running in real time, and even if there are numerical inconsistencies, the AI would immediately correct them. But what gets corrected are only inconsistencies that occur within the game's design parameters. If he makes too many deliberate changes it could exceed the AI's correction range, and it might cause unexpected bugs or malfunctions. However, it's also true that he won't survive the 7th day at this rate. He wonders if there's any way to go beyond the normal gameplay. He then realizes that with the developer functions there is a way to level up regardless of resource amount, and he asks if they can use instant build mode. She looks surprised, then he explains that it's one of the test functions from development of the game, and you can build facilities and upgrade regardless of resources on hand. She says with this the system AI won't make corrections, and he says exactly, modifications made with developer privileges are designed to be accepted by the system. She says since he's logged in with the developer mode she'll go ahead and start searching for the function. As she starts browsing she eventually finds it, and he asks if she can access it. She says she can't from the console, but if she dives in herself she thinks she can do it, and she starts flying head first into the status window. He tries to tell her it's dangerous as we see her flying around the inside. She spots the access point, and says that she just needs to do this, but as she starts editing it something spawns in behind her. She turns wondering what it is as she sees it going to eat her. But she is quick enough as she grabs onto the terminal, she starts flying away with it, saying that the AI must think she's a bug. She starts to type fast and finally accesses the proper terminal. The AI starts to speed up too and bites, but it's too late as she flies out of the status window on the other side. He asks if she's okay, and she says that she is, but she almost got eaten. He says that makes sense because her going inside the system isn't normal behavior. The system must have recognized her as a bug, and tried to eliminate her. She gets terrified, and he asks if she can peek into the system from the console as he doesn't want her going back in. She says she can, and when she does she sees multiple AIs have now spawned in, and it looks as if they're searching for her. She tells him about it, and he says that this means accessing the same API again would be difficult. She apologizes, but he says it's not her fault. It's also proof the system is functioning properly, and he's sorry for making her do something so dangerous, but he's just glad she's safe. A status window asks if he would like to level up the base using instant build mode. He and Leafy both nod toward each other, and eventually when Anemone comes back she looks surprised as she watches it in real time. The base gets expanded by adding a couple new buildings, and barricades all around the perimeter of the cabin. He then exits, and we see it's now actually at level 3. She says the magic stone sure is incredible, and he says that it doesn't mean that they have the ability to do this anytime they want, but she can pick whichever cabin she likes, and he'll stay in the other one. But she should decide quickly. She asks why she needs to do it in a rush, as something flies in from the sky landing in the middle of the courtyard. As it looks like some kind of pillar she looks surprised wondering what it is, and he tells her that the cabins are going to be filling up pretty fast. We get a better look at the thing that spawned in, and it turns out to be a green orb. A whole load of people start to walk out from it, all looking confused. Anemone asks if people really just teleported in. They all start wondering where they are. We see status windows appear in front of them. Now they have their names as well as the title of villager. They all look around confused. Anemone goes to draw her weapon. The little boy Axel quickly sticks his hands out, blocking his mother from her. Kamiya waves his hand, telling her to stop, and stares at the boy who looks scared. Kamiya sighs, and introduces himself to them, saying that he's been living here since a few days before they arrived. The base is surrounded by a forest where monsters dwell, and when night falls those monsters attack the base. In order to survive they need their cooperation, and he asks for them to lend their strength. Of course though, everybody seems a bit scared. An older man steps up named Sylvan, and he asks Kamiya if he also just arrived here. He says that he has, as he was guided by a magic stone. Sylvan says that he's heard stories about them, but to think the day would come in his lifetime when he would be summoned by one is crazy to think about. A larger man in the group asks if he's really taking everything he's saying at face value. His name is Waldo. Waldo says that it seems true that they were transported here by magic, but for all they know he might have done it to kidnap them. Waldo then turns around, and Camilla asks where he's going. Waldo says that he's going to go check out the surroundings first, as they don't even know if it's true that monsters will show up. He tells half of the villagers to stay back, and orders some of the men to go with him. Camilla sighs once more, and tells Anemone to stay here and protect everybody. She asks where he's going, and he says that he needs to go protect the other group as he trails them from behind. He tells them not to go too far ahead. While the area around the base is a site for gathering resources, it's a dangerous zone where monsters appear both day and night. According to the game system, you can't go to another base just by leaving your current one. Furthermore, the further you get from the base the stronger the monsters that appear, as it's a mechanism designed to limit player movement. We see Waldo and the men laughing while looking at some horned rabbits, asking if these are the ones that might attack the base. Camilla says that's right, and it's a bit rough, but there's no better way to learn than through experience. They're called hunter bunnies. They are a carnivorous and ferocious rabbit-type monster that uses its harmless appearance to lower prey's guard before they surround and kill them. They start leaping at the men, attacking them one after the other. Camilla yells, telling them all to close their eyes and hold their breath. Waldo asks why, and he tells them to quickly do it. As they start to do exactly that, he pulls out pepper from his inventory and throws 3 capsules, breaking them near the rabbits. It makes them fall onto the floor because the smell is too strong for them. He tells Waldo and the rest to run. As they do, he says that they will head back to the base, but Waldo is far behind, telling him to wait. After that though, they make it back safely, and Waldo and the others receive medical treatment. The villagers accept the fact that Camilla was telling the truth, and he and Anemone help train them. It is mostly Anemone, as she guides them on how to use bows and some basic swordsmanship. One of the villagers tells Waldo that he sure seems fired up, and Waldo says that fists alone aren't enough to drive back those monsters. Next time he wants to be able to stand his ground instead of being made a fool by rabbits. Camilla watches them training, and Leafy says that she's glad they've gained more companions at the base. Camilla says that she's right, and then asks if there's a problem, because she keeps staring off at Axel. She goes to say something about that child, and Camilla explains that in the early stages of the game there are guide-like events and characters set up so that the player can understand the rules of the game world through the natural flow of the story. Axel is a character designed to convey the fact that NPCs who die do not come back to life during a monster raid. He loses his life in the heat of battle, and while witnessing the grief of his mother Lyra, the player learns that each individual in the base is an irreplaceable existence. Camilla knows that the boy will soon die, but he doesn't know if he has the power to change his fate. Sometime later we see the women and children preparing food on the table, as it's time for everybody to eat. Waldo takes his seat, saying that they moved well out there, and he's starving. A woman tells him to hurry up and eat quickly. Lyra tells Camilla that he and his group should help himself too. Of course Anemone doesn't hesitate, and she instantly sits down. Camilla takes his seat as well, and the entire environment is lively, as they are able to share a moment of peace and enjoy their time with one another. Axel then asks Anemone what she thinks of his swordplay. She tells him that it's actually not bad, and he gets excited, but she makes his excitement instantly die down, as she tells him that his archery needs some real work. Camilla says that Axel is an NPC placed here as part of the content to help players understand the rules of the game. Even if a player doesn't send him to the battlefield, his overconfidence and belief in his own strength will lead him to the front anyways, where he loses his life. That's how the game makes players realize the NPCs don't come back to life. Waldo teases Axel for finally joining with the adults. Lyra tells Waldo to stop egging him on. Axel tells his mom that the monsters are going to attack them anyways, so he needs to get strong enough to fight. She tells him there's no need for him to do that, as he can leave it to the adults. He tells her he wants to protect everyone. His dad was strong too. She says that he certainly was, but he never mistook recklessness for courage. Camilla says that's right. Recklessness and courage are different things. To keep Axel from dying he might need a new approach. One backed by courage, and a real plan for victory. Sylvan says that's enough of that, telling Axel that he's still a child. He can't fight the same way an adult does, and just like his mother said he should not confuse courage with recklessness. Axel says yes sir. Sylvan says they could all work together to protect the village, and then realizes this is no longer their village. Camilla is lost in thought, and Sylvan calls out to him. Camilla apologizes, since he was zoned out. Sylvan asks him if there happens to be any alcohol around. Waldo wonders what he's yapping about right before battle. Sylvan says that because it's before battle he's decided he doesn't want to die sober. Waldo tells him that's pathetic. Kamiya tells them that if they make it through the night, he'll prepare a victory toast for everyone after. Kamiya goes back to thinking, and Leafy asks if something's wrong. He says that they're alive, and the one who threw them into this harsh world was none other than him. She realizes that it must be a burden to him now that he knows they're living people. He tells her that of course it was necessary to make last the best game possible. She says that's right, and if it weren't for him they never would have existed to begin with. He says that a creator who is some irresponsible god, and doesn't take care of things, and has no accountability, is not something that he wants to be. So he'll do his best to avoid that. A little later in the afternoon Kamiya tells everybody that there will be a monster raid tonight. They'll check their movements to prepare for it. First, those not participating in combat should keep watch on the surroundings from inside the base. The monsters should technically come from one direction, but they can't be careless, and he wants them to split up and watch the perimeter carefully. Out of those who can fight, the 3 who are relatively good with the bow will move as an archery squad, with Anemone as the leader. Everyone else will take up swords, and move forward in pairs. One pair will act as guards in front of the archery squad, and Waldo and the rest will be on the front line with his pair. Waldo and his boys are ready for some revenge. Waldo asks Kamiya who he's pairing up with. Kamiya says he's pairing up with Axel. Everyone looks surprised, and Lyra tells him that she doesn't want her son fighting all of a sudden. Kamiya tells her that he understands her concern, but being in the back doesn't mean he's safe unfortunately. If he has the will to fight, and the ability to fight, he should get stronger as soon as possible, as it will increase his chances of survival. Lyra looks down at her son, and can tell that he wants to fight too. Kamiya tells her that he will protect Axel with everything that he has. He says that the AI moves toward the result of Axel dying. If that's the case, by daring to place him on the front lines it makes the enemy's movements easier to predict, since they will come straight for him. He can't tell them that, but to overturn this scripted event he has to risk and overcome it. Anemone says that when it comes to combat they can trust Kamiya. Kamiya says this is only assuming that the boy is up for it, since it's about moderation. Axel nods to his mother, saying that he will do it because he wants to be strong just like his dad. Lyra looks worried. Kamiya says that this is a harsh world. They can't take reaching tomorrow morning for granted, but tonight the ones who will win, and the ones who will survive, is none other than them. It is now time for the nightly raid. As we see an actual horde of goblins this time approaching the village. But it seems they are all coming from the front, which is barricades and the watchtower. At the start of the battle it progressed exactly as he anticipated. He told Leafy to keep an eye on Axel, and if anything happens to inform him immediately. She says of course. We see Anemone and the rest drawing back their bows as she tells them to make the horde scatter and fire away, as it doesn't matter if their aim is perfect. They start unleashing their volley towards the goblins. While some are being hit, the rest are just completely whiffing. Kamiya tells the rest to take this chance to get rid of them, as they can use their numerical advantage on the ones who are scattered. He tells Waldo and the rest to make sure they don't let them get past them and head to the watchtower. In response to the base level upgrade the number of monsters increased, but for a first battle everyone handled it well. By preventing enemy coordination they reliably eliminated them in 2-man groups. To the point that Waldo got confident enough where he charged in, because the enemies were a lot weaker than he expected. As he's fighting one of the goblins we see its eye starting to warp out as if the AI is influencing it. It looks over towards Axel, and Waldo smacks it asking why it's getting distracted in the middle of their fight before killing it. As they continue their all-out war we see some goblins falling into traps, while the others are trying to make their way towards Axel just as Kamiya had planned. By using the traps effectively they steadily reduce the enemy numbers. With Axel present their movements were far easier to read, but the world of Last was not so forgiving. As one of them smacks away a goblin it staggers before its eyes start to get tampered with by the AI once more. It makes him confused, and it starts to get stronger. Anemone recognizes that their movements are strange, and jumps off the watchtower saying that she'll handle this herself. While Kamiya is holding off the front line for Axel, Leafy is also keeping watch, and she turns spotting one telling Kamiya that he needs to look behind. When he turns he sees Axel being held onto the floor by a goblin, and he screams telling Axel to get up quickly. As the goblin goes to stab him in the face an arrow flies into its skull. As Anemone recognized that the monsters were heading straight towards Axel she barely made it in time, and the goblin pulls the arrow out of its skull. She says they're not even focusing her even after that attack. Waldo screams no, and charges in and hits one on the shoulder before he starts to try to overwhelm it with strength, but it throws him into the air. As he's flying, he tells Axel to get his sword ready, because they all start turning their gaze towards him once more. But Axel is completely riddled with fear as he's looking down at his shaking hands and his sword on the floor, and he starts to panic. The goblin runs in to take advantage of this, but his legs are shaking and he can't even dodge. Luckily Kamiya blocks the attack, but because his stats are so dog shit it forces him onto the floor. He says this is the AI intervening to try to make Axel's death come true. The goblin then starts digging into his shoulder, causing him to scream. One of the other goblins who got shot in the face leaps towards Axel to finish the job, but Kamiya charges in and blocks for him. She throws it onto the floor, and Waldo makes his way back before hitting it in the face. He says that he might have lost his weapons, but he still has his fists, but while it starts to stand back up, Anemone is the first to charge in. Kamiya tells them that they can't let them get close, and they have to continue pulling them away. Eventually Waldo manages to topple one over again, and starts wailing on it until Anemone fires an arrow over his shoulder, hitting it in the face, killing it. But she understands that they have to push them back, and her and Waldo continue. Kamiya is holding off one of the goblins from Axel, and tells him to hurry up and aim for its head. Axel is riddled with fear. Kamiya tells him that this is the crossroads of fate, and if he wants to live he needs to fight and become strong just like his father. Hearing this gives him the resolve he needs, and he tightens the grip on his blade before blindly swinging, hitting it in the face. Kamiya takes this chance to finish the job as he thrusts forward, stabbing through its throat. They finally have some breathing room now, and he tells Axel that was well done, but they can't stop here because there's only a few more left. Axel and Kamiya charge in to help Waldo and Anemone, and they all work together to slowly finish off the fight until eventually the only ones left standing are the villagers. As all the goblins are dead on the floor, Kamiya holds up his broken blade into the air and yells saying that they won, and everybody starts cheering because nobody died either. The quest pop-up appears saying that day 4 has been cleared, and they quickly head back inside to the villagers as Lyra starts to cry and runs over hugging her son. Kamiya watches, seeing how scared Axel was, and he says that he's glad they managed to overturn his death, but they'll still have to get through the day 7 stampede without letting anyone die. The next morning Waldo and the rest are surprised as the base has now been upgraded 2 more times, making it level 5. Waldo says this is incredible as he is looking at the new barricades that have been installed, and Sylvan asks Kamiya if this is the power of the magic stone. He says it is, and the monsters they defeat in battle, and the items they gather from the forest, are stored as resources within the magic stone. In exchange for those stored resources he can use the magic stone to fortify the base. Under the protection of a fortified base their status limits, rather their potential for growth, will also increase. Waldo tells him to dumb that down for him, and Anemone says that it means the more the base is fortified, the stronger they can become. Kamiya says it doesn't mean they will get stronger without doing anything, it only makes growth possible, and no change occurs without training and experience. But now it's time for them to eat some breakfast, and as soon as they're done it's training time. Thanks to increasing the base level through instant build they were able to secure a solid team and equipment for the early stages of the game. They steadily made it through the 2 subsequent raids, and each NPC grew, and their coordination became seamless. Axel's growth in particular was remarkable. After that the AI didn't focus its attacks on him anymore, and he grew into a formidable combatant. But finally it's time for the 7th day, as they will be taking on their first stampede. We get a flashback to beforehand, and Kamiya is at the training grounds inspecting the blades. Lyra tells him that breakfast is ready, and he thanks her, but she's curious as to what he's doing. He says that he's sorting out the weapons with low durability, since it would be fatal if they broke during the fight. He ties the handles off with red string, saying that with this it'll be done, and he tells one of the villagers to not use swords with this red string attached to them, and to make sure to tell the rest. The villager says okay, and Kamiya goes to leave as Lyra reminds him about breakfast. He says that he'll be right back after he checks the hunger levels, no idea what this means, but Lyra looks at the blades, saying she understands. The flashback ends, and we're now back to the Horde Knight. He explains that once every 7 days a stampede will occur, and it'll be a larger scale raid than any before. He wants those remaining at the base to also take up arms and defend the interior, and to ensure they aren't overwhelmed by sheer numbers they will be fighting in a compact formation tonight. After explaining where everybody should be, he tells them all it's time to move out, and to make sure they've checked their weapons. Axel looks down at his blade, and it looks a bit damaged, and he turns back around. But instead we see him running straight into the front line. One of the villagers asks if he's okay, and he says that he is. Kamiya tells them all to get to their positions, as even the non-combatant villagers are holding onto weapons anxiously. Lyra looks worried, and when she looks over at Axel, what she notices is that his sword is one of the ones with low durability. It turns out that instead of running back to swap it out, he must have hesitated and went straight back to the front line. The monsters start crawling out of the forest, and this time we even see flying ones, as there's a group of bats with the goblins, and they make their way to the front line. The status window warns him that the stampede is now occurring, and that he has to survive it for this quest. One of the villagers says there's so many of them, and Kamiya says not to worry. They've prepared specifically for this day. As the stampede begins making its way straight toward them, he orders the archers to let the arrows rip. We see Anemone and one other man, and she tells them to stay calm, and aim just like they practiced in training. The arrows fly in, missing the goblins, but hit the ground beneath, which causes a spark, and a chain reaction that sends a massive explosion throughout the field. Waldo says that's a pretty hot welcome. Kamiya explains that upgrading the base allowed them to produce gunpowder, and he turned it into classic landmines. They're effective against a horde, but he tells them not to let their guard down, and we see the remaining goblins charging through the smoke, and one of them screams, stretching its hand out toward them, and Waldo splits it in half. They all continue fighting, even Axel. Anemone says that they can leave the ones on the front of their allies, and they should focus on pinning the ones coming from their rear. Some of the goblins start veering off to the side, and the rest of the archery unit spots them, and starts firing arrows that take care of them. But they miss the one closest to the edge, and it charges toward one of the villagers, grabbing at them. One of the women steps up and stabs it in the chest. It's not just her, as the other villagers are also still fighting. They manage to thin them out, but the goblins keep running straight toward them. Some fall into the pits and die, others get killed by arrows, and those that make it through are dealt with by Kamiya and the rest of the front line. The forest then begins shaking. Anemone feels it, as the tower itself begins to shake too. She wonders what's going on, but knows it isn't good, then tells Kamiya to watch out, since something is coming. A giant foot smashes down, crushing several goblins. Kamiya looks up in horror as a massive goblin stares down at them. This is a goblin lord, a high-tier goblin species, and it buffs all other nearby goblins. Kamiya is pissed, asking why a goblin lord is showing up right from the start. It begins screaming, which buffs the remaining goblins. Their strength is completely different now, and one of them knocks Axel backward. He says he can't believe it suddenly got so strong. Lyra watches in fear, because she knows his blade will break soon. She looks over at the other villagers fighting, then turns and runs somewhere else. The goblin lord charges straight toward the watchtower, and Kamiya yells for everyone to watch out. Anemone tells the man inside to get out now, and they jump just in time as the tower is shattered. She lands on the ground safely, but the other man eats shit, and starts yelling about his leg. She drags him toward the villagers, telling them to get the wounded inside the base, and start treatment immediately. Lyra then runs straight past her holding a blade. Anemone yells, asking where she thinks she's going. The goblin lord is now in their back line. Kamiya looks at it, realizing this is worse than he thought it could get, and this is hard mode, on a completely different level. But back to Lyra, she's frantically running through the field. A goblin stands before her, and leaps at her. An arrow flies in, killing it, as Anemone followed her, and she asks what the hell she thinks she's doing. She says she needs to get this sword to Axel, since the one he's using right now has low durability. Because it has a string, and that's what Kamiya mentioned earlier. Anemone seems surprised, as Axel's fighting off on the side. She says she'll go, and pass the sword along to him. Another goblin runs in, and she kills it too. She realizes there's no choice, but to hold them off here. She starts giving her covering fire, as Lyra runs through the battlefield. Lyra thanks her, and makes her way through, as now all the goblins are focused on Anemone. She says this is looking a bit rough. On Waldo's side, he and his boys are fending off pretty well. While they manage to handle the ones close to them, their health is low, as they've taken continuous damage due to the goblins' increased strength. Waldo turns, as his boy drops onto the floor. They stare at the goblin lord, asking what the hell that is, but know it must be because of it, that the goblins got stronger. Kamiya, and one of the other villagers are standing right before it. Kamiya says this is not something that's meant to appear during the Day 7 stampede. Even Axel can tell that things don't look good, and that the rest need to go help. As the goblin lord raises its club, Kamiya, and the other villager are fending off the attacks, and he looks up surprised, telling him to hold his shield up. But the attack has so much power, that the goblin lord smashes the floor, sending the dude flying through the air. But he also kills the goblins nearby, which surprises Kamiya. The villager lands directly beside him, and Camilla asks if he can stand up. Axel and his pair quickly run over to help them, as the Goblin Lord raises its club for yet another swing. As it comes down, Camilla stares directly at its club, and follows its trajectory. Before he raises his weapon, it sends a shockwave all the way up through the boss's arms, causing its weapon to shatter. The villagers are speechless, and even the Goblin Lord looks pissed off because of it. Camilla widens his stance once more, and he says that he actually timed it perfectly, and a parry is a common technique in games, but doing it with his own body is definitely a new feeling, since that shit was low-key scary. The Goblin Lord looks down at his empty hands, before screaming once more, and this time bro starts drooling. Axel says that they can handle this side, and they're counting on Camilla to deal with the big one. But he needs to make it quick, since they can't hold out for long. He says he'll do his best, and he dashes off to the side, causing the Goblin Lord to look over. It swings down once more, and of course he parries the attack, but Camilla says that it'll be bad if this becomes a war of attrition, and he has to turn the tide somehow. Leafy then tells him that she's still here, and Camilla comes up with an idea, saying he needs to see the random number generation console, and she asks if he's certain. He says yes, and she pulls it up directly in front of him. We see the AI balancing is on. Leafy asks what he's looking for. He says that since the correction for the RNG is active, he can use all critical with this. He explains that a critical hit is a blow that ignores the opponent's defense, and deals double the normal damage, and critical hits are usually determined probabilistically by random numbers. Everybody knows what RNG is, and he says that there's a bug in the game system that he had put off fixing. If you parry an enemy attack 15 times in a row, the AI attempts to adjust the RNG system, because the attacks are missing too much, but that adjustment puts a load on the related memory, causing the RNG system to freeze as a result. Temporarily every single attack becomes a critical hit. Leafy looks surprised, asking if that's possible, and he says that it is, but there's a good reason why he put off fixing the bug. Parrying 15 consecutive attacks is something that was nearly impossible even during play testing, but now since it's a real body, maybe there's a shot. As the battle continues, Axel and the other villagers are doing their best to buy time. Camilla steps up saying that there is no time to think about it, they just have to do this. The Goblin Lord swings toward him, and he parries it again, and again. As the attacks continue piling up, we see him get to 3 in a row. Axel turns hearing the sounds of their fight, and looks concerned, but he gets another one, and tells Axel that it's fine, since he has a plan. If he can block all of his attacks in a row, he can turn this around. The distraction causes Axel to get caught off guard, and his mother finally makes it in time. Camilla continues blocking 2 more attacks, and he's now at 8. The Goblin Lord gets furious, and kicks towards him, but of course he parries it too. Now he's at 9. The Goblin Lord falls onto his back, but it allows him to grab onto his club once more, and now Camilla is at 10. The Goblin Lord then distances himself, before coming in for another attack. Camilla continues parrying them all, saying that at this pace it will take no time at all, as he only has 2 more left. While Axel is handling one of the goblins, the other one turns, and starts to run away from him. Axel realizes this is bad, and we see Camilla parry yet another attack, meaning he's at 14. The goblin from Axel's side is running straight towards him, and Axel yells telling him to look out. He manages to swing his blade to block the attack, but it shatters, since the durability was low. He and Camilla both look surprised, and Camilla realizes he needs to save him, but Lyra yells telling Axel to catch, as she throws a blade towards him. He does, before cutting the head off of the goblin. The Goblin Lord then tightens the grip on its club, before swinging down to capitalize on the distraction, but Camilla turns in time, and parries the attack. Now he's at 15, and he says he can end this in an instant, as he now starts pressuring the Goblin Lord, putting it on the defensive. Instead of him having to parry all the attacks, he's landing blow after blow, and of course since they're all criticals, the Goblin Lord keeps taking continuous damage, until he finally manages to land a critical wound across its chest in an X pattern. He lands behind it. As the Goblin Lord starts to wobble, it falls face first into the ground, shattering it. The other goblins look horrified, before running off back into the forest, and Waldo and the rest are just confused, wondering if maybe it's over. Leafy tells him they actually did it, and Camilla says that was way too close. Axel asks if they actually managed to win, and looks towards his mother, who smiles at him, but the Goblin Lord is still alive, and Lyra realizes that it's aiming straight for Axel, and she pushes him to the side, and takes the attack instead. As it cuts across her chest, Axel screams. Camilla can't believe that it's still moving, and quickly smacks its head in, killing it. Axel holds onto his mother, and begins crying, as she holds onto her wound, telling him that she'll go on ahead to his father, and he cries telling her no, but she says that he needs to come much later, as he needs to be able to tell her a ton of stories, and she can't wait to hear them. As the light goes out in her eyes, Axel sits there holding her, while screaming. The other villagers can't believe what just happened, as it even begins raining, as if the world itself was upset by this, but with this, the quest has been completed. They eventually build a grave for her, and Camilla can't help but stare at it, and feel regret for how he couldn't save her. Leafy tries to talk to him, and she tells him that she couldn't find the cause of the Goblin Lord's appearance. At least there's no evidence of the game settings being changed, he says he understands. She tells him even though the Game Master was stolen from him, the detailed setting permission within the game still belonged to him. So unauthorized setting changes should not be possible. But maybe they had a workaround. But he says that he's an awful creator. He was arrogant, and he created the game, so he should know it inside and out. He thought he could handle any situation. But the reality is that he let someone who wasn't supposed to die under his watch. Leafy says even so, without him the base would have been wiped out. And the NPCs are alive without a doubt, thanks to him. He says that she's right, they're alive, but he was the one who created them, and made them suffer. He's driving them to their deaths. He walks away feeling depressed, saying that he wants some alone time for a bit. He sits out on the field, and looks up at the sky, and Anemone walks over asking what he's doing. As some birds begin flying overhead, she draws back her bow, and kills one. And as it drops onto the floor, she walks over telling him that in this world they risk their lives to survive. Sometimes they take lives, and sometimes theirs is taken too. But that's no one's fault, that's just how it is. He says even so, he still feels guilty. She tells him that he needs to follow her, and check this out. He does so, and at the training grounds we see everybody doing their best to make sure that they'll get through the next night. He asks her what she's trying to show him, and she points telling him to check it out. And when he does, he sees Axel trying his hardest as he's sparring one of the villagers. She tells him that he's actually been at it since this morning's funeral. He asks if it's really been that long, and she tells him that it's because Axel says that he wants to tell his mother lots of stories, so he needs to get stronger. The other villager he's training with falls to the ground, saying that he needs a break. And Axel runs over towards Camilla super excited to see him. Of course Camilla feels guilty, so he has a hard time talking to him, but Axel asks for a spar. He says he wants to get strong so he can tell his mom all of his stories when he eventually sees her, and he doesn't want to fall along the way, so he can yap her ear off. Camilla, of course feeling guilty, says that he understands, and he grabs one of the swords, telling him that he won't hold back. Axel says that's exactly what he wanted. Camilla now understands that they are all living, and that they are much stronger than he originally thought, and if that's the case, then he must show them a way of life that he won't be ashamed of. We see off in the forest somewhere not too far from the base, there are some dwarfs. One of them asks where this place is, and the other picks up a broken arrow, and says that this was created by the magic stone, and there are traces of magic power within it. They might finally encounter a clue, as they head straight towards the base. Meanwhile, inside of the base, everybody is getting ready for breakfast, or dinner, can't tell, but Anemone can't wait to eat. Camilla notices the dwarfs approaching, and Leafy tells him to look. Camilla says it looks like they are finally here. The villagers run over, and we finally learn one of the dwarfs' names is Dorn, and he asks who the leader is here. The one with him is his disciple, and he tells him to be more polite. Their name is Ginger. Camilla says that would be him, and Dorn stares at him asking if there is a magic stone here. Ginger says actually they are dwarfs traveling in search of rare materials, and they heard there was a magic stone here, and they were hoping they could see it. Camilla says that they are just about to eat, and they can chat while they munch on some food. Ginger thanks him, and Dorn agrees. They take a seat by them on the table, as everybody is ready to chow down. The atmosphere is pretty lively. Camilla explains that they are dwarven craftsmen NPCs. I can't tell if Ginger is a guy or a girl yet, but Camilla says if they become allies they can strengthen weapons, and develop facilities that the magic stone can't produce. Then ask if they just want to see the magic stone, and Dorn says yes. Ginger looks confused, as he stares at the both of them, and says that they are traveling in search of a material called the Philosopher's Stone. Camilla asks them to explain it, knowing what it is of course. Ginger says that the Philosopher's Stone is a legendary object, but it is believed to actually exist. There are weapons still around today that were supposedly made from it. However, no one has actually seen the real thing even among the long-lived dwarves. As craftsmen it is the ultimate rare material they simply have to touch. Dorn says they know that mana is somehow involved in its refinement. Kamiya says it's true there is an item called the Philosopher's Stone in Last, but it was said as a reward for a special multiplayer-only quest, making it impossible to obtain through normal play. In the sense that only a player can get it, it's not wrong to say it's related to mana, or magic stones. He says that this must be why they want to see the magic stone. Ginger says exactly, and that magic stones, rather sorcerer, are also extremely rare, and they understand that it must be precious to everyone in this village, but they only want to use it for reference, asking if they are going to be allowed. Kamiya says that is fine, and Ginger asks if he's certain. He says yes, but in exchange he wants them to forge weapons for them. Monsters attack them almost every night. To protect the lives of his comrades, they need high-quality weapons. Dorn and Ginger agree since that's an easy task. Kamiya says once they finish eating he'll show them the magic stone immediately. As he stares down at his food he wonders how he's going to get them to try to join him. Inside of the main building we see them staring at the magic stone. And Dorn says it doesn't seem to be what he's looking for. Ginger asks if he really figured it out already. And Dorn explains the magic stone is more of a gate than a material. It is a pathway for mana, fundamentally different from the material they seek. Ginger says that sucks to hear, and Kamiya asks if it really wasn't what they were looking for, but he expected as much since their insights are sharp. The magic stone is just an interface for the player. It's not the kind of thing that can be used as a material. Dorn says that he appreciates him letting them stay here, but it wasn't the lead on the Philosopher's Stone that he hoped for, and they'll be leaving tomorrow. Ginger asks if they're really leaving, and Kamiya says on his end he wouldn't mind if they stayed a bit longer. They actually have a workshop that isn't being used, and since there are materials they can produce with the magic stones he can provide a good environment for production. Dorn says he appreciates it. But no can do. Kamiya says he understands, but hopefully he can handle the weapons that they have already because the monsters are going to attack again tonight. He'll show them to the workshop, and they can feel free to use any of the equipment. Leafy asks if he's really sure about this, because if they let them leave they won't join them. Kamiya says that Dorn at least is very driven to find the Philosopher's Stone, and nothing else is likely to move his heart. However Ginger is a young craftsman who reacts, he must have a desire to feel how people react to his work more directly, and he feels the same way when he started making games, so he knows exactly how Ginger feels. If he feels this is a place where he can find fulfillment as a craftsman, there's a high chance he'll stay. Nightfall is upon us now, as we see them fighting off the monsters. Ginger and Dorn watch, and they can't believe that there actually are monsters attacking. As two of the goblins get killed by arrows, one of the archers say that strengthening the arrowheads really make a big difference in piercing power. Ginger said that if they had more time they could have increased the accuracy too, but they say this is way more than enough, and thank Ginger. Waldo and Axel are also busy fighting, and Ginger is analyzing, saying that a great sword would probably be better for Waldo, but also if Axel adjusted his center of gravity it'd be easier for him to swing. Ginger can't help but try to optimize all of these things, and Dorn can tell what he's thinking. Kamiya gets sent flying backwards a little bit from one of the goblins, and Leafy is asking if he thinks Ginger will join. He says his words alone won't be enough. As he finishes off his goblin he says judging by the looks of it Ginger does not seem to dislike the idea of staying so far. Sometime later in the workshop, Dorn finishes laying out the weapons, and Ginger says he'll go get the luggage ready. The villagers thank Ginger for the help the other night, saying that, thanks to him they were able to take down the enemies much easier. Ginger says that he's glad he could be of use. They wave, telling Ginger bye. It might be a woman, I still have no idea. Waldo and Axel spot Ginger, and thank Ginger for reinforcing the blade, as the sharpness is incredible. Axel as well says that adjusting the sword made it easier to swing. Waldo smacks Ginger's head, saying that he wishes Ginger would stay in the village for a while, and make a custom weapon just for him. Axel asks if they're both leaving, and Waldo says that Ginger and Dorn are leaving together. Axel says that's a shame, but they say they'll probably cross paths again, and wave bye. Ginger does too, until Kamiya steps up. He has a smirk on his face, and asks if they're leaving already. Ginger says that his master is a person who is single-mindedly devoted to the Philosopher's Stone. But Kamiya asks Ginger if they're the same. Their interests aren't limited to the Philosopher's Stone, or so it seemed to him. Ginger goes to talk about it, but Kamiya says life here is harsh. Monsters attack every night. Even with magic stones, resources aren't exactly abundant. They're short on manpower. That's exactly why a single person's influence here is so great, and the village needs Ginger. Ginger's skills directly correlate to the lifespan of everybody here. He asks Ginger if they'll become an ally or not, and requests that they stay in the village. Ginger doesn't know what to say, and Dorn opens the door, thanking Camilla for the help, saying that they're finished inside, but it's time to head out. Of course, Ginger isn't ready to leave just yet, and tells Dorn that he actually wants to stay here in the village. Dorn looks back at him, asking if he's serious. Ginger says he is, and Dorn puts his shield down on the ground, telling him to forge a single weapon. Ginger wonders what he means, and Dorn points his axe at him, saying that he cannot turn a half-assed apprentice out into the world. Ginger understands now, and heads inside, and starts hammering. Camilla asks if there's anything that Ginger needs, as some things can be generated with magic stones. Ginger thanks him, but says that there's no meaning unless it's done with his power alone. Camilla smiles, saying that he sees, and walks away, leaving Ginger to it. That afternoon, Ginger walks out with a blade, and hands it to Dorn. Dorn inspects it, saying that this is a sword for the human race, and it's not what he aims for. A second-rate worker looks at the object, but a first-rate worker looks at the person. If that's the case, then this reflects what lies ahead in his vision. He has his own flame, but Ginger has his own too. He should never let that flame go out, and follow the fire within himself. Camilla asks if that means Ginger passed, and Dorn turns with a smile on his face, saying that he'll be leaving Ginger in Camilla's care. Ginger looks down at the blade, and Camilla looks over at Leafy smiling. As Dorn leaves the village, Ginger bows, showing their master the greatest sign of respect once more. Camilla and Leafy nod at each other, because now that they've gained a craftsman, they can strengthen the production base. Leafy asks if it's time to level it up, and Camilla says it is. It's time for them to use instant build once more. In terms of days, we're on day 9, and we see everybody outside of the base, and Ginger's eyes start to sparkle as it gets upgraded in real time once more, and it adds a nice stone foundation to the entire area. Everybody heads inside, and starts looking around in awe. But the workshop also got a pretty big upgrade. We see the base is level 8. Ginger runs over saying that the magic stone is so cool, and it's his first time seeing one. Camilla says that the outer walls and the workshop were upgraded this time, and when Ginger heads inside it looks like the perfect place for him to spend hours. He starts trembling with excitement, and Camilla says this is a workshop specifically for him, and to feel free to use it however he wants. Ginger thanks him, and says there are so many things he wants to try out right now. Camilla smiles, and heads out the door, leaving him to it. Leafy flies over, and Camilla says getting Ginger on their side was a huge win considering the battles ahead. Their current equipment was feeling a bit unreliable. She says she agrees, but Camilla tells her thanks to the level up, the amount of resources the magic stone can store has increased too, and he's hoping to stockpile some mana in the upcoming battles. That is because right now once the mana reaches the required amount she will appear. Of course they don't say who, but we know it's another NPC now. Camilla says after bringing Ginger into the base they managed to overcome the subsequent raids, the quality of their weapons and armor improved, and the burden on the members heading into combat was reduced. In a world where death is final, securing supplies is vital, and he's having Ginger act in a support role during combat. Only 3 days left until the second stampede now, and he has to hurry and strengthen their position, and he needs that NPC to show up. On day 11 we see Ginger showing a new item off to everybody. Waldo asks what's the deal with these lumps of dirt, and Ginger explains that these are golems. It's a magic-driven doll that moves on its own. Camilla says that golems are support items that can participate in combat alongside NPCs. They fulfill the same role as the creator set as their master. If a swordsman is the master they use a sword. If it's an archer as the master they use a bow. And the stats are a degraded version of the masters, but they are useful for filling out the unit's numbers. Ginger says that it's only because of the magic stone that he can make them move, and he's always wanted to try building one. Anemone asks if these things can really fight. And Ginger tells her that if they set a master they can fight the same way as that person, though their abilities will be lower. One of the villagers asks if that means they can help with the chores, and Ginger says they can. Cleaning and laundry can be left to the golems. And everybody looks over at them amazed. The golems then start to look alive. Ginger asks if there's another source of magic nearby, because they seem to be reacting. One of the villagers say that someone's coming from the forest, and when they all look over they wonder who it'll be. As she steps up we see none other than a woman dressed like every stereotypical elf ever. She introduces herself as Eurizia Waywald, and challenges the leader of the village to a duel. She's the daughter of the Queen of the White Forest. Everybody stares at her confused. And Camilla says that the spawn conditions have been met then. Leafy says come to think of it she forgot she was this kind of person. As Eurizia looks super proud. Camilla says for now he's the leader of this base. She low-key laughs at him, saying that if he loses this duel, he will make her the leader. But not to worry, as she'll guarantee the village's prosperity. He says he sees asking what she'll do if she loses. She says that's impossible, but in the 1,000,000 to 1 chance she does, she'll do whatever he says. He says surely she won't take her words back. And she says that as the daughter of the Queen of the Forest, she will never go back on her word. They start cringing at her again. But now it's time for them to fight, because the quest for recruitment this time is a duel with the mage. If you've watched till the end, comment statue to let me know. Thanks to my Patreon members. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.